jurisdictions local. I'm talking about those small areas, jurisdictions that could really have an impact first, and then you go national.
That's correct. And mentioning local, I was listening to a local news broadcast, and it was announced that a teacher had just received a kindergarten teacher had just received her 28th pupil. Now, you know, that's too many students in any classroom, but especially with young learners. So,
you said kindergarten?
Kindergarten. That's what I heard, and it shocked me to no end. So it is very important that we get people to vote in these local elections for school board, and follow up with how people are actually voting, if they're supporting smaller class sizes, and what they're doing to help fund the schools.
If you're as upset as many people are with what's going on with the way teachers are treated in this state, with the level of education, which really needs to be improved for all students, but particularly those in poor areas and particularly poor rural areas, we're looking for candidates. So it's time to step up, and everybody needs to get active this year.
Well, mentioning getting active and other people, I'm also interested in getting the immigrant population to vote. And we've started trying to get in there. We've done drives. And of course that was highlighted this weekend with all of the Trump administration announcing the planned roundup of the undocumented persons. Our problem here locally is that, let's say you're married to an undocumented person, or a person who is a DACA, that stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Many of their spouses are intimidated, literally afraid to speak out about issues that affect them. Some are afraid to even register to vote for fear that ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, will come to arrest for deportation their spouse. So when we've tried to get into the Latino community, go into their community trying to register citizens, we've been told that they're afraid that we are with ICE. So I'm concerned that we'll not get a large turnout of eligible Latino citizens. So that's another area of concern. But I would like to encourage those Latino folks to think of this and remember that the people that are in your household, in your community, they're depending on you. They need you to go out and register and vote so that you can help us elect people that will make plans to help improve the conditions in your community, and also make it help the undocumented and also the DACA people have rights as well as citizens.
So, is that the one of the topics was naturalized citizens? I think, is that the one that you were speaking on?
Right.
What demographically, what is, if you know, the percentage of Latinos that's in the I'd say local area, I'd say PD area, and
I've heard something like 3 to 5% that are eligible.
And primarily they're Mexican.
Okay. You talked about naturalized citizens, so are you finished with that? Because I was going to go to the next topic, which was the economy.
Oh yes, it's big.
That's you? Okay. Go ahead, you got it.
Well, the New York Times, matter of fact, just recently released an article that said the economy is leaving many Americans behind, especially many of the people who live in rural areas, African Americans, the auto workers, and manufacturing jobs are decreasing.
That's the whole middle class, really.
Mm-hmm. So while the stock market is booming, many people do not own stocks that I know.
Most people don't.
Right. So while they have a job, their wages have been stagnated, and many are working 2 jobs just to make ends meet. And then I'm reminded of the people in rural America where I was brought up. At church and at school, young people frequently heard that getting an education was important and heard many discussions on who was running for office and what was needed in our community. We heard that you vote for people who will help your community, okay? So community centers, parks, low cost and decent housing, safe roads with or rather without or with few potholes, that is. Infrastructure needs do not just happen by accident. Our elected leaders make many decisions that affect our everyday lives. The environment and pollution are affected by the policies that our elected leaders make. So remember that the flooding from our previous hurricanes and storms that we had in the area?
Right.
Solving these problems and maintaining our community centers and parks will create good paying jobs. Again, it's still about the economy and putting people to work with jobs where they can afford to feed their families. And that's a concern that I have. And that's why people should really register to vote and track the people that they vote for and how they are voting.
And when the candidates start coming out, you need to get out there and listen to what they have to say, but don't just listen to what they have to say. Tell them what's on your mind, and also ask them questions so that you know that they're going to support you, or if they're not, then you know not to vote for them. I would add flooding to the list of things that, Verlene, something that has affected a lot of people in our area. And one thing I'd like to add, which has nothing to do with economy, goes back to the voting issue. If you were denied a vote in 2018, or even if it was before that, let's fix that problem now. Don't wait until election day. Either go to the election office, which is located in Conway on 4th Avenue at 1515 4th Avenue, or come to our office on Beatty Street at 311 Beatty Street, right near the courthouse, and we'll work with you to fix it. But it's important that we solve those problems now. There's no rush. You're not going to be in a line on election day told that you can't vote, and then what do you do? So we want to make sure you can vote. Let's fix the problem now.
Mentioning voting, Don, I'm concerned about convicted felons. That's an issue that we have. If you're a if you have served time in prison and you finish serving your time, you're off of probation, you need to re-register and vote. You probably voted before you went to prison, but they removed you from the voting rolls. So now, please go and re-register. You can either do it at the Board of Elections, where Don was just talking about, or when we're having voter registration drives, do that as well. And if after you register, if they have questions, they will contact you. But please, I cannot say that enough, because I know it has affected quite a few people in our community where they've served time, and for some reason they're not re-registering to vote. So that's a key issue, and we don't want to lose those votes. We need those votes now. This would be one way. You've had experience. You can help us to look for candidates and talk about prison reform, things that we need to know about, and make your voice heard. You've served your time. Now come on back and exercise your right to vote.
Well, that's a major plea.
I'm very passionate about that.
Yeah.
And
can you explain, but it has to be told to me, I get yes again and again, because originally I thought that once you had a felony, I mean, that was it. In South Carolina anyway. And you can't, I didn't hear the word never vote again, but with a felon you can't vote.
That's
because
true.
Unless you have that dismissed from your records.
Well, once you've finished probation and you're off of probation, then you can re-register your vote, but you have to take the effort to do that.
Ed, you're right. There are many states where you can never vote again if you're a felon, but South Carolina is not one of them. As surprised as many of us are about that, but let's take advantage of it.
And mentioning registering to vote, this is National Disabilities Voter Registration Week.
All right.
People with disabilities most definitely should register and vote. And also, I encourage them again to look for and vote for people who support programs that will help you to be successful in society. We have, as a teacher, I know about laws that we have that limit how you can restrict people's access to care and education programs. So I encourage, I'm putting a plug in at our HCDP office today from 4:30 to 7. We're having a program, and we're having several speakers, so I encourage folks to come by. It's 311C Beatty Street in Conway. So please come by but again, folks with disabilities, we need your vote. So please come on out and learn about the other programs and things that you can access.
Yeah, and on election day, there are provisions made for people who maybe can't get out of their car, that they can bring a voting machine to your car. It's called curbside voting. Unfortunately, many of the people that work the polls aren't aware of these things. This is why it's important that we educate everybody on these things, so that you're aware of what your rights are and you can claim your rights when the time comes. Another group of people that's very important that they take some action. You may have registered to vote, but if you have not voted in the last couple of elections, your registration may be inactive, and you need to go to the voting office and renew your registration. So please make sure you do that. A lot of people are upset right now about what's going on in our country, and we don't want people to show up at the polls to find out that they can't vote. So let's take care of those problems now.
So, with our next topic, we were talking about Christians in society. That was set as as a preview of what you were talking about. That should be interesting. Can you give us a little highlight on that, Ms. DeWitt?
I say the Christian voters should not get hung up on one issue and eliminate quality candidates. You hear them saying, well, I can't vote for a Democrat because of the abortion. I can't vote for this or that. Also, I believe it's not being a good Christian when, because you have wealth or a very good paying job, to not care about the needs of the poor, except seasonally or once or twice a year when you do donations. So, all people, including Christians, should educate themselves on what candidates stand for, and oftentimes do what I call, they do this, and I hope you'll stop doing it, it's called voting against your own best interest and against the interests of the needy people that you see when you go to church and in our communities. A Republican sent this to me, it's a friend of mine, it says, love the fetus and hate the child. Now, that pertains to Christians in terms of abortion. They strongly are against abortion, and I believe in a woman's right to choose. So, I encourage all listeners to check the voting records of their senators and representatives serving in both Washington, D.C. and in Columbia to see how they voted in terms of programs that help single parents, funding of education, child care, access to health care for the needy. It's one thing to say you support the heartbeat bill, but then what about supporting the programs that help the surviving fetus once it's birthed? Democrats support these programs, which are designed to give the recipient a hand up, such that they're not stuck in a lifetime of poverty. And we have many successful people who are proud to tell you that where they are today because of the types of programs that Democrats support. So I encourage all Christians to really think about and weigh the issues and not just focus on just one issue and be stuck on it, and vote for candidates that will actually help our people be more successful and lift them up out of poverty and be more caring in terms of your attitude and your vote.
Yeah, and I would even extend that to the middle class, because the middle class is being pushed down, as we talked about a little bit earlier. Clearly it is important that we always have to help the poor, because in many cases they just need a little bit of a hand up, and if they get that hand up, they can do the rest on their own. But the middle class has not been going anywhere with the economy that we have. The only people that are really making out are the rich. So, Verlene, you're right on.
So, I can't give you the number on that, but I do know that it is affecting a lot of families. And when you have those plants closing, then people are either going to be accepting jobs of a lower wage, which is a problem that we already have now, that people are working 2 jobs just to try to make ends meet.
So what about, I don't know if you can provide these kind of statistics or not, but what about the coal industry? That has come under much scrutiny from the climate change people, where they're looking at the rejuvenation of the coal industry that was misrepresented by, I believe, by a statement which was reported, half of it reported by Ms. Hillary, about coal is out and all that kind of stuff. But what do you see any movement there in terms of what the economy is doing?
Well, in terms of energy itself, the coal industry, they're supposed to be building plants now that are cleaner for the use of coal. But generally speaking, from my understanding of the energy industry, they're trying to go more towards renewable, the solar energy, wind energy. It's cleaner, it creates more jobs actually, and higher paying jobs.
Yeah, that's true.
So the coal industry itself is going to be the industry, from all indications, it's not going to be that growth type of industry that we'd like to think about.
I've been reading this. I think some of the major concerns that the transition from coal industry to solar energy, for example, there's a gap in there. So how will these people make out doing that transition? Okay, the people who were so dependent on coal as part of their employment, now they're transitioning to solar and wind. What were they doing in the meantime, and how were they being not fairly compensated? I can use the word compensated for the lack of having their job.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm pretty sure that they're going to have some unemployment, but also they would have job training to transition into the other energy type jobs that would be available. So that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, they would have these jobs, but I mean, what is the government? I assume that the government itself should probably step in during this time to help those people who are making that transition and they don't have necessary skills. I know they're probably having free schooling for trade and all that kind of stuff, but it takes resources to get to the trade school and to take these courses, like in the meantime.
And that's where the government comes in with the federally supported education programs to help them at the community college level in particular, where they're training. Because a lot of even companies that come into an area, they first look to see if the training is available for the workforce. And so you have the workforce there with the coal industry. So as new industry comes in, then those workers that were displaced from the coal industry would be trained in I'm sure their education would be subsidized, as well as offered some income to help them until they employed, hopefully at a higher wage than what they were making with the coal, and also with better health. Because the problem with coal industry, not only is it you worry about the smog and the how many pollutants are in the air, but it's also been kind of dangerous for accidents for the workers. So I see a plus in terms of us transitioning, though we still will have coal plants now.
Now, let's just expand this a little bit, because you've talked about coal, but really it goes beyond that, because automation is really another thing that is taking away jobs in the same way that
in the coal industry.
Not just in the coal industry.
Okay.
We're seeing it. Look at driverless cars. I mean, we are probably going to see in the next 20, 30 years driverless trucks. Truck driving right now is a pretty good field to be in, where you can make a decent salary. But with driverless trucks, what are people gonna do? We need to start looking today at what education do people need and how do we get it to them? And the problem is that the people we have in government right now are not thinking about that. They're not providing the programs that are needed right now to get people trained for the future. And that's a problem, and that's one of the reasons why all listeners here need to be looking at who's running and what are they going to do about the jobs and what are they going to do about the training that needs to be out there, because we are going to need programs not only for coal miners, eventually for truck drivers, but a lot of the jobs that people say are moving overseas, a lot of them are just disappearing because of the automation that's going on.
And speaking of our listeners, you can give us a call, area code 843-248-6365 or 843-248-2890. You're listening to the Whittemore Community Magazine, Hour of Power, right here in WPJS 1330 AM. On your dial, we're live talk radio. Give us a call, your thoughts on today's topics and today's guests. So, have you've gone to great length, well, you're not great length, but let's talk about Christians in society.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw that topic, I thought you I thought you were going to kind of lamb blast that's hypocrisy that seems to be in the voting structure, especially Republicans, but you didn't. So were you talking mostly about abortion with the focus there, right?
That is correct, because I'm hearing that some younger people, when they go to some of the churches, they're being told they can't vote for a Democrat because of abortion. They believe in abortion. And that, Democrats believe in a person's right to choose. So I don't believe that Christians, first of all, should be giving out misinformation. That's not Christian in itself.
Amen.
And so you take that, and then you also have people that will actually say, because of one issue, I can't vote for this candidate. And I just want our Christian people to expand them on their focus of who they can vote for and be more open. You are, for the most part, I found, it's hard to find a candidate that's going to be cookie cutter to exactly what I believe. Okay? And so I'm encouraging folks to think about that. I was talking with a lady at church the other weekend. She told me she couldn't vote for X candidate because, and she said, I just can't. And so you have to stop and just slow down a little bit, but put your anger aside or your disappointment and look at the overall picture and decide who is the better candidate of the two that's going to end up running for an office.
And let me just say this about abortion. Democrats are not pro-abortion. We're just pro-woman's right to choose. And the number of abortions could be cut, and we're in favor of that, by doing two simple things. And we actually saw this happen in the state of Colorado. When they provided birth control to women, they saw the number of teenage pregnancies decrease substantially. They saw the number of abortions decrease substantially, and we're in favor of that. And we're also in favor of sex education, but not just for girls. It's just as important for boys, and maybe more important, because boys and men need to step up and take some responsibility when it comes to children. We all need to do our part.
That's it. You're right about that. It was another topic that I was privileged to get from you all, and that was Supreme Court's impact on society today. And Ms. DeWitt, you want to speak on that?
Yes, one thing I can't say enough is how you vote really affects you in a lot of ways, especially the selection of judges. The president nominates judges, and right now he's really focused on getting a very conservative Supreme Court. And a lot of people don't realize this, but in 2013 a decision was made where parts of the Voting Rights Act was repealed, such that almost 1,000 polling places have been eliminated throughout the United States.
Whoa.
Okay? So some places that used to, and because of the repeal and changes that were made in the Voting Rights Act, some places that had voting on the weekend or where you could vote in community centers, now they have to, if you want to do early voting or absentee voting in person, you have to travel further than you once did. So all of these decisions are affected. And also, people talk about abortion. Just remember, it's still a lot of talk about Roe v. Wade. So we want to make sure that I want to make sure that I stress to you, I can't say enough, that the Supreme Court and the other judges that are appointed really do affect our daily lives in the ways that we once just took for granted. So be careful of how you're voting in terms of that. I wanted to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So what is, give us some of the particulars, just in case we have something unlearned on this matter. Because I don't hear it a lot, just in speech, or in passing with people about the impact of appointing conservative Supreme Court members, judges. Give us some, give us some specifics as to.
For example,
Right.
the retired judge John Paul Stevens just died,
Right.
and he was talking about one thing that he regretted was that he voted in the Al Gore decision for president. Okay, that was one decision he regretted. He also regretted about reinstituting the death sentence, the death penalty. So just keep that in. That affects a lot of minorities in particular.
Was he on the liberal side or the conservative?
He's a Republican, but he tended to vote more on the liberal. Right, right. So right now and he said that Judge Gardner should have been confirmed, whereas Mitch McConnell and company held him off till we could get Brett Kavanaugh now in there, who is actually an avowed conservative.
Better get some of these phone calls in before it's done.
Well, the other thing that the Supreme Court allowed was unlimited money to come into politics, and that is not good for any of us, unless you're rich. So the only way a lot of this is going to get turned over is by turning the court around, because constitutional amendment is very, very difficult to do.
The Republican, this is a Republican Party county or state, you want to put it. So how do you feel that you can really make an impact? I mean, do you see any changes?
Well, let me just show you one big one. In the 2018 election, the state of South Carolina saw a 50% increase in the number of Democratic voters going to the polls. In Horry County, that number, and we're comparing this to the prior midterm, so it's an equivalent type of measure. In Horry County, that number was 100%. Now,
100% increase?
Increase in the number of Democratic voters, almost at the level of a presidential election in 2018. So we have a lot going on for us. We have done a lot as a party. We've gotten a lot of participation. We see the candidates that are coming through. Kamala Harris just came through, and we saw a big increase, a spike in the number of volunteers. We've had a lot of good luck with our fundraising. There's a lot of positive signs. Now there's no doubt we have a lot to do. But when you say the state, be careful, because there's only the state Senate, there's only a 5-seat difference in Democrats versus Republicans.
Oh,
so South Carolina is not quite as red as a lot of people believe it to be.
And all that. It's good to be here at the Gospel 1330 Studios with the Winnable Magazine Hour of Power. Good to be here with our chairman, Don Kahn, and our second vice chair, Verlene Dewitt, this afternoon. I just made a guest appearance in the house, and I thoroughly enjoyed your broadcast today, coming into Conway. It was very excellent and everything. But I'm here. They wanted me to say something about the Conway Perimeter Road. Thank all of you that came out to the county council meeting. The next meeting where they'll unveil the projected project would be Thursday, August the 8th, from 5 to 7 p.m. at 1301 2nd Avenue in Conway. That's going to be in the conference room next door to the County Council chambers on Thursday, August the 8th. And then we'll be back to County Council on Tuesday, August the 13th for another meeting there. So whether you live in the Conway area affected by the Conway Perimeter, we need your support from across the county. And if those that are listening worldwide want to fly into Conway, fly on into Myrtle Beach International Airport, Florence. You can come on into Florence, it's a little cheaper. And if you want to go on into Charleston and Chucktown, fly on into Charleston. You can fly for about $100 cheaper and come on into Charleston and make your way on into Conway. And we need your support on Thursday, August the 8th at that meeting, public input meeting with SCDOT. So thank you, HCDP, Horry County Democratic Party, for sharing these few minutes with me to get the word out about the Conway Perimeter. And let me say this, one thing we said in 2018 when the SCNG and scanner was coming through, now it's owned by Dominion with the pipeline, we said to the residents, this is one family today, a few families, but it could be you tomorrow. We didn't know that in 2018 we'll be right back in 2019 where more families stand to lose their property. So you can easily think across the county, because there are many highway projects that are coming up and other things that are going on with big development. So don't say it don't have anything to do with you, because what affects one person in the county, it affects us all. So let's join in together, and glad to hear again Don and Verlene here with the Whittier Magazine Hour of Power. Thank you for these few minutes. We look forward to seeing you, and we want to say thank you again for all of your support from across the county in opposition of the Conway Perimeter Road Phase 3 of the Ride 3 project. Look forward to seeing you soon. Have a
Cedric,
great...
before you go,
Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about eminent domain and how it affects the residents?
Good, great. And that just happened to my relatives. Eminent domain, and I'm still kind of upset with the Supreme Court, and you were talking earlier about the Supreme Court and why elections have consequences. My cousin-in-law's property on Falk Circle, Terrence Lane and Liz Lane in Conway, they fought for just compensation, one side of my family. The others fought against eminent domain. They lost. And they condemned their property. Eminent domain came in, condemned their property, and I wish if you go online now to My Horry News, you will see the article about the Conway Perimeter. If you flip through the photos, Janet did a good job, Janet Morgan, and she has a photo of one of my cousin's house where the pipe go right up near her bedroom window. And so eminent domain, they lost in court, had to get a lawyer, but they sided with the big corporation because people benefited on the other side of Falk Circle getting gas into the Myrtle Beach area. So eminent domain is very dangerous. They use it to do whatever they want to do, and they condemn the property. And let me say this with the road, when the attorney came through about the Conway Perimeter, so some of them said they'll sell their homes or they're going to get just compensation at fair market value. He assured us a few nights ago that because the pipeline came through the community and with eminent domain, they'll just condemn the property so you'll get less than your appraisal amount. All right, I trust I answered your question, Ms. Dewitt.
That's correct. I want people to know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dewitt. Thank you. Thank you, Whittemore.
All right, Cedric. You're listening to the Whittier Community Magazine Hour of Power. I hand over PGS 2:30 a.m. on your dial.